It happened to my family a couple of years ago. It's not a ghost story, and it's not about a stalker in the woods. It's about how weird and violent the real world can be, and how sometimes the police catch the bad guy, but you're left with more questions than answers. My younger sister, let's call her Mari, was 20 at the time. She's a tiny girl, maybe 100 pounds soaking wet, but she's always been tough. She had picked up a job working the graveyard shift at a gas station a few miles from our house. We all hated that she worked there, especially at night, but she needed the money for tuition, and she insisted she could handle it. Since she didn't have a car, it was my job to pick her up when her shift ended at 6 a.m. One Tuesday morning, I woke up, grabbed my coffee, and drove down to the station like I did every other day. Usually the parking lot is quiet, just a few early morning commuters getting coffee. But when I turned the corner onto the main road, my stomach dropped. The entire gas station lot was lit up with red and blue flashing lights. There were 3 police cruisers parked at weird angles, and yellow crime scene tape was already being strung up around the pumps. Just as I was pulling up, I saw an ambulance pulling out of the lot, sirens blaring, speeding toward the highway. I slammed my car into park right on the street and ran toward the tape. A uniformed officer stepped in front of me, hand on his belt. "Sir, you can't be here. This is a crime scene. That's my sister," I yelled, pointing at the store. "She works here." "Is she in that ambulance?" The cop's face softened immediately. He asked for my name and my sister's name. When I told him, he sighed. "She's alive, son, but she took a beating. They're taking her to County General right now. You should go meet her there." I didn't ask any more questions. I got back in my car and drove to the ER, probably twice the speed limit. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip the steering wheel. You hear about gas station robberies going wrong all the time on the news, but you never think it's going to be your family. When I finally got into the ER, a nurse led me to a curtained-off room. Mari was sitting up in bed. She had a hospital blanket pulled all the way up to her nose, so only her eyes and forehead were showing. When she saw me walk in, she muffled through the blanket. "Don't freak out, okay? Don't freak out. I'm okay." "What happened?" I asked, rushing to the side of the bed. "I'm gonna lower the blanket," she said. "But seriously, don't freak out." She lowered the blanket. I felt sick. It took everything I had not to punch the wall right there. Both of her eyes were swollen shut, turning a deep, dark purple. Her nose was clearly broken, shifted to the side, and packed with gauze. Her lip was split wide open with stitches already in place. The doctor came in a minute later and listed off the damage. 2 black eyes, a broken nose, a fractured elbow, and cuts inside her mouth. But Mari? She was acting like she had just scraped her knee. She was angry, but not scared. He didn't even get the drop, she mumbled through her swollen lip. I was so mad. He beat me up over $60. Later, after the police took her statement and reviewed the security footage, they walked us through what happened. I eventually saw the video clips during the legal proceedings, and it's something I wish I could unsee. In the video, the store is empty. Mari is stocking drinks in the walk-in freezer, the beer cave. She opens the glass door to step out into the main store area to say hello to a customer who had just walked in. She didn't know he was already waiting for her. As soon as she stepped out of the freezer, this guy, a tall, lanky man in a dirty gray hoodie, blindsided her. He hit her so hard in the face that she flew backward, stumbling back into the freezer and hitting the metal floor hard. The video shows him standing over her. He didn't just ask for the money. He started stomping on her and punching her while she was down. But my 100-pound sister started kicking back. In the video, you can see her fighting, scratching at his legs, trying to protect her face. She wasn't giving up. Eventually, he dragged her to the register. He forced it open, grabbed the cash in the drawer, which was only about $60, and ran out the door. The irony, which Mari found hilarious despite her pain, was that she had just pulled the large bills from the register 10 minutes prior. She had put the drop, about $400 in cash, in a manila folder and slid it under the counter. The robber never looked there. He beat a girl half to death for $60 and missed the real money sitting right next to his hand. Here is where the story gets unsettling. The police caught the guy about 20 minutes later. He was on foot, running through a neighborhood a few blocks away. It was pretty open and shut. He matched the description. He had the $60 in his pocket, and he had bruised knuckles. But there was one major piece of evidence. The guy was covered in blood. His shirt, his hands, his pants, soaked in it. The police assumed, obviously, that it was Mari's blood. He had beaten her brutally, and her nose and lip had bled a lot. They took his clothes into evidence, arrested him, and the DA prepared for trial. A few weeks later, we got a call from the detective handling the case. He sounded confused. They had sent the bloody clothes to the lab for DNA testing, just to make the case airtight for the jury. They wanted to prove the blood on him belonged to my sister. The results came back negative. The blood on his shirt didn't belong to Mari. Okay, I said to the detective, so he cut himself during the fight? Is it his blood? No, the detective said. We tested it against his DNA. It's not his blood either. I went cold. The man had walked into that gas station covered in fresh blood that belonged to a third person. My sister's blood was on his knuckles, sure. But the large amounts of blood soaking his shirt and pants belonged to someone else. An unknown male. They grilled the guy for days. They tried to get him to confess to another crime. They checked reports of muggings, stabbings, and assaults in the area from that night. They looked for missing persons. Nothing. To this day, nobody knows whose blood that was. The guy is in prison now for assault and robbery. He never talked. But every time I think about that night, I don't just think about my sister fighting for her life in that freezer. I think about the fact that 10 minutes before he walked into that gas station, he had been somewhere else, doing something to someone else that left him covered in blood. And whoever that person was, they were never found. Before we dive into the next story, if you're visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell icon to stay updated with our upcoming scary stories. This happened a few years ago when I was 18. I'm in my 20s now, but I can still remember the feeling of cold adrenaline hitting my stomach like it was yesterday. It's one of those experiences that changes how you look at people, and definitely changes how safe you feel in your own car. At the time, I was a bit of a night owl. I often stayed up playing video games or watching movies until the sun came up. It was a Tuesday night, technically Wednesday morning, around 4 a.m. I suddenly got hit with a massive craving for junk food. We didn't have anything good in the house, just ingredients for actual meals, and I wasn't in the mood to cook. I decided to make a run to the 24-hour gas station about 2 miles from my house. It was late spring, so the weather was actually perfect. It wasn't cold, but the humidity had dropped, leaving this really nice, cool breeze. I drove over to the station, which was totally empty. That wasn't unusual for a weekday at 4 a.m. The only light came from the fluorescent buzzing of the canopy over the pumps and the store sign. I parked right in front of the store, went inside, and grabbed a hot dog from the roller grill, which probably had been there for hours, but I didn't care, and a bag of chips. I paid the clerk, a tired-looking older guy who barely looked up from his phone, and walked back out to my car. Instead of driving straight home, I decided to just sit in the parking lot and eat. I wanted to finish the food before I got back, so I didn't have to worry about waking my parents up with the crinkling of the chip bag or the smell of the food. I got into the driver's seat, tossed the food on the passenger seat, and cranked the engine. I connected my phone to the Bluetooth and put on some music, just chilling out. Because the weather was so nice, I rolled my driver's side window down partially. Not all the way, just about halfway down to let that cool breeze circulate through the car while I ate. I was maybe 3 bites into my hot dog, completely zoned out, staring at the empty road. The music was loud enough that I couldn't hear anything outside. I was in my own little bubble. Out of nowhere, a figure appeared in my peripheral vision. Before I could even turn my head properly, a man was standing right next to my door. He tapped on the glass. I jumped so hard I nearly dropped my food all over my lap. My first instinct, thank God, was to hit the lock button on the door panel. I heard the thud of all 4 doors locking. The man didn't look homeless, but he looked rough. He was wearing a dark hoodie and jeans, and he was standing just a little too close. I moved the window down another inch, just enough to hear him better, but not enough for him to reach in. "What's going on?" I asked. I tried to sound tough, but my voice probably shook a little. The guy looked me dead in the eyes. His face was totally blank, which was scarier than if he had looked angry. "Get out of the car, man," he said. I froze. My brain couldn't really process it for a second. "Excuse me? Get out of the car. I'm taking this car." He said it so casually, like he was asking for the time. Then he tapped on the window again. But this time, it wasn't his knuckle. I looked closer at his hand. He was holding a knife. He was tapping the tip of the blade against my window. I quickly glanced around the parking lot. It was dead silent. No cars passing by, nobody at the pumps. The clerk was inside behind the counter, probably not even looking outside. I was completely alone. Panic started to set in. The idea of getting out of the car terrified me. The safety of the vehicle was the only thing separating me from that knife. And who is to say this guy wouldn't stab me just for the hell of it, even if I gave him the keys? He seemed unstable. I noticed he was standing slightly back from the door, maybe trying to act nonchalant so he wouldn't draw attention if the clerk did happen to look up. He wasn't aggressive yet, just demanding. I knew I had to do something fast. My window was the weak point. If he wanted to, he could probably reach through the gap or just smash it. I took a breath and looked at him. "All right, man, give me a second," I said. I moved my right hand down to unbuckle my seatbelt to make it look like I was complying. He watched my hand closely, waiting for me to open the door. But while he was watching my right hand, my left hand was already on the door panel. I hooked my finger under the window switch and pulled up. Since it was an automatic window, it shot up immediately. It took the guy a split second to realize what was happening. His eyes went wide with rage. He lunged forward and tried to jab the knife through the closing gap. He missed the opening by a fraction of a second. The tip of the knife dragged across the glass, making a horrible scratching sound, but the window sealed shut. He immediately grabbed the door handle and started shaking it violently, screaming something I couldn't hear over my music and the blood pounding in my ears. Of course, the door was locked. I didn't wait another second. I slammed the car into reverse and stomped on the gas. I peeled backward out of the spot. The guy chased me for a few steps, waving the knife in the air, shouting at me, but he quickly realized he wasn't going to catch a moving car. He stopped and just stared at me. As I swung the car around to face the exit, I looked toward the store. I could see the clerk standing behind the glass, phone pressed to his ear, looking directly at the guy. He had seen it. I slowed down just for a second as I passed the guy. I looked him right in the eye, and with my hands shaking, I flipped this knife-wielding prick the bird. Then I sped out of there, running the red light at the intersection just to get away faster. I drove straight home, constantly checking my rearview mirror to make sure no headlights were following me. When I got inside, I locked the front door and called the police. An officer came by a little later to take a statement. He told me that they had already received a call from the gas station clerk about the incident. The guy had run off into the woods behind the station as soon as he saw me drive away. Because the clerk and I both gave statements, they got a really solid description of him, but as far as I know, they never caught him. I never heard anything else about it. It was 1992 or 1993. I was around 12 years old at the time. My family, my mom, my dad, and I were driving down to Virginia to visit some relatives. If you remember road trips back then, it was different. No cell phones, no GPS, just paper maps and long stretches of dark highway. It was late, probably just past midnight. We had been on the road for hours, and the conversation had died down as we all got tired. My mom broke the silence by saying she really needed to use the bathroom. My dad nodded and said he'd pull over at the next spot we saw. A few miles later, we saw a sign for a rest area that also had a gas station attached to it. It was one of those older, isolated stops right off the interstate, surrounded by thick woods. The place looked open, but it was dim. The fluorescent lights under the gas canopy were flickering a bit, giving everything a sickly yellow tint. There were maybe 2 semi-trucks parked way off in the back, sleeping, but the car parking lot was basically empty. My dad pulled up right to the front of the main building, so my mom wouldn't have to walk far. "I'll go park the car and pump some gas while we're stopped," he said. My mom hopped out and headed for the doors. I decided I wanted to grab a drink or maybe a candy bar, so I unbuckled and followed her a few seconds later. My dad drove off to the pumps, which were situated a bit to the side of the main building. I walked through the double glass doors into the lobby area. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy. To the left was a small convenience store area where a clerk was usually sitting, but I didn't see anyone behind the counter immediately. To the right was a hallway leading to the restrooms. I started walking toward the store section, but something made me freeze. Coming out of the hallway on the right was a man. He was huge, easily 6'5", broad shoulders, wearing dirty work clothes. But that wasn't what stopped my heart. He was carrying my mother over his shoulder. He held her like she was nothing, like a sack of flour. My mom is a small woman, barely 5'2", but seeing her draped over this giant man's shoulder was the most terrifying thing I have ever seen. The scariest part was the silence. My mom wasn't kicking. She wasn't screaming. She was just limp, her face turned toward me. Her eyes were wide open, staring right at me. It was a look of pure shock and terror mixed together. She looked paralyzed. The man was walking calmly, not running, heading toward the side exit that led to the dark side of the building, away from the gas pumps where my dad was. For a split second, my brain couldn't understand what I was seeing. Then the adrenaline hit. I screamed. I screamed louder than I ever have in my life. "Dad!" The man didn't even flinch at my scream. He just kept walking with that same terrifyingly calm pace. Behind me, the front doors burst open. My dad had just finished initiating the pump and was coming in to join us. He saw me pointing, saw the man, and saw his wife over the stranger's shoulder. My dad didn't hesitate. He let out a roar and sprinted at the guy. The man stopped. He didn't turn around to fight. He just realized the gig was up. He abruptly leaned forward and dropped my mom onto the linoleum floor. Without saying a word or looking back, he pushed open the side exit door and walked out into the darkness. My dad skidded to a stop next to my mom, checking if she was okay, then looked at the door. He wanted to chase him, I could tell, but he couldn't leave us alone. "Lock the doors," he yelled at me. I ran to the front doors and locked them. My mom was shaking uncontrollably on the floor. My dad helped her up, and we huddled together in the middle of the lobby. The clerk finally emerged from a back room, looking confused and scared by the commotion. We told him to call the police immediately. We went back to our car, locked all the doors, and drove the car right up to the main entrance under the brightest lights we could find while we waited for the cops. When my mom finally calmed down enough to speak, she told us what happened. She said when she walked into the ladies' room, the lights were off. She assumed the switch was just broken or on a timer, so she took a step inside to feel for it on the wall. He was already in there. He had been standing in the dark in the corner of the women's bathroom, waiting. As soon as she walked in, he grabbed her. She said he squeezed her so hard the wind was knocked out of her, which is why she couldn't scream. He told her if she made a sound, he'd kill her right there. He was carrying her out to his vehicle. The police arrived about 15 minutes later. They searched the area, but the man was gone. There were tire tracks on the side road behind the gas station, suggesting he had a car waiting right outside that exit. We didn't finish the drive that night. We drove to the nearest town and stayed at a motel. None of us slept. We pushed the dresser in front of the door. The next morning,
I used to travel a lot for work, and most of the time I stayed in cheap but decent hotels because I didn't care about anything except having a bed and a shower. Nothing scary ever happened to me in any hotel before, so I never thought about danger or weird people. That changed during a trip I took for a training event in a small city in Pennsylvania. I checked